Oh, it never gets old. Oh my goodness. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to Great Convos, where whether you agree or disagree, we can always have great convos. I am your host, the wild guy today, Roger Caesar, and that gentleman over there, well, he
Hello.
is the wise guy. Go ahead and introduce
Bonjour.
yourself.
Wise guy, Alexandre, Matt. We are working on our contrast here. So why are you so wild, Roger?
Oh, because I have to be. I have to bring the energy all the time. That's just who I am. Anyone who's ever seen me perform knows that I just keep bringing the energy. And why are you the wise guy?
I guess I try to be more cerebral about things. I think things over before I act, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not as good. Sometimes you need a good balance, and hopefully this is what we have here with Great Convos, Roger.
Oh, most definitely. Listen, we are happy that you are here with us. We want to thank you again for tuning in. Last week was the debut of Great Convos. And I got to tell you, Alexandre, we had a lot of people who were commenting and saying that they absolutely enjoyed our show. So thank you to everyone. I mean, what would you like to say to all those that were on last week? And of course, those that are here today?
It's so great to see that we're just having fun, Roger and I, doing this, and people are actually listening to two guys just having fun and having conversations. We started having this idea when we were just having coffee, and we realized maybe some people would like to hear what we have to say. Looks like a few people did last week, and we see that some are here today.
Yes, thank you for showing up today. Hey, we've got Natai Iyer, who was the 2021 runner-up at the World Championship of Public Speaking. Hey, my friend, how you doing? Good to see you here. We've got Patricia as well, who has always been very supportive of both of us. Thank you very much for being here today. It's been a crazy week for both of us, hasn't it?
Yeah, what have you been doing, Roger? I saw you were traveling.
Well, in the week that we have had, obviously we started the show. And then on Thursday, I flew out to San Francisco, where I spoke for District 57 Speakers Forum. Had a great time out there. Shout out to Lisa Fairchild and all of her wonderful group of members out there who helped in organizing the event out in Fremont, California. Had a wonderful, wonderful time. Did a workshop and, of course, a keynote speech talking about the tips to a winning speech, and obviously giving them the 3 words that it all starts with: decide, commit, succeed. What about you, my friend? What were you up to?
Well, for last week, and I did see that keynote. I was lucky enough to get a free ticket online to watch it.
You were there.
A great event, and we even gave each other a high five online. So let's see if we can do it here right now.
Let's try it.
Did we get it? Yeah.
There we go.
That's very, very smooth, Roger. Bravo. So last week was the culmination of a big tour that I did in this area. I'm in Greater Sudbury in Northern Ontario, and I visited 9 different schools, 15 different classes, about 300 kids in grades 1 to 4, and I helped them tell stories.
Awesome.
With cards. I started by saying, well, okay, I told them a story about a castor, the animal that lives that has a big flat tail, a beaver. I told them a story about that, just a fun story. And then I asked, well, now it's your turn to tell a story. And they're like, oh, I don't know how do I tell a story? And I just gave them these cards, these cards that are from Placotte. Alors, merci beaucoup au jeu, à l'organisme Placotte qui a créé ce jeu-là. Thank you to Placotte. Now, these are 3 cards. I have this here, the main character. You need a character for your story. You need a problem or a conflict and a solution. And I've got dozens of them. So these kids were able to pick out cards and just randomly choose them to create a story out of nothing. So I gave them tricks to do that. And as well, I created an original story just for their schools when I presented that to them last week in front of about 180 kids in one big room. So it was great fun. I'll do a shout out also to Nadia Simard. Merci, je sais que tu as écouté le premier épisode. She watched the first episode last week. So thank you for your support. Merci.
Awesome. We've got some comments. I just wanted to say hello to everyone. Hello to Lena, who is on. Hello to you, Rob. Thanks for joining us. Peggy, Keith Fernandez, thanks for joining us as well. And of course, Lisa Fairchild is on here. Thank you for joining us, Lisa, from sunny, well, wasn't that sunny? It was cold, California. But hello, thank you for being here with us today. Appreciate it. So you were just talking about the three elements that make a speech. And today what we'll be talking about is, well, we are going to break down Alexandre's winning speech at the 2022 World Championship of Public Speaking. This is something that we wanted to do. We've been wanting to do this for a long time now, for both of us to break our speeches down. And today we'll be doing his. Next week, please make sure to tune in because we'll be breaking down my winning speech at the World Championship of Public Speaking as well. So Alexandre, are you ready?
Yeah, and I rewatched my speech to prepare for this, and there are so many clips that I could comment on. You know, I know my speech has been watched a few times, at least 16,000 times on YouTube. And analyzed many times by experts. And I wanted to find out, to show you some elements that nobody's really commenting on or analyzing because they don't know the specifics of it. So I'm going to show you a few clips, and maybe 4 or 5 clips. We won't have time for more than that. There's so much that I could say. It's incredible when you work, hundreds of hours on one particular 7-minute speech, how much you could say about it. And I think
that's what it is, right, Alexandre? It's understanding there's so much parts to putting these things together. And we're going to be touching on today, at least, we're going to be touching on the content part of it and showing people the why behind Alexandre's brilliant speech. Why did he put these things, these people, these characters, and this conflict, and of course the solutions into this particular speech?
So let's go ahead, and first I will say bonjour, Karen Lee. Hi, Karen Lee. This is my sister-in-law watching. I'm glad you're here.
Okay, hi. How you doing?
Right. So let's look at this.
Well. And Valentine. Let's say that.
The main ingredient.
Oh, sorry.
My grandmother.
I jumped the gun a little bit. So here's the first clip when I introduce my grandmother, Grandmama. And by the way, if you want to see the full speech, if you haven't already, or if you want to watch it again, because it is very good, you can click that. You can find the link to YouTube inside of this event, either in LinkedIn or Facebook. All right. So here is my grandmother.
When I was a child, these gatherings centered around the main ingredient, my grandmother. Grandmama, humble, resilient, and the best cook in the world.
So here we are, we're talking about your grandmother. There's the first character that you introduced to us in this speech. For our viewers, for those that are here who may not be on that speaking path, but want to understand where you're going. You did talk about, you briefly said about bringing characters in. Why was Grandma so important in this speech?
Well, Grandmama is the matriarch, and she was the reason why we met every year. And when she was a child, she would have met with her family as well. So it's a very long time tradition. So, my story, I tell the risk of the tradition crumbling. Well, I needed to present Grandmama. And you see, Keith mentioned power of threes, right? So the way that I describe my Grandmama three ways: humble, resilient, and the best cook in the world. Why those three things? Well, I needed the best cook in the world to make a link to my family recipe. But the other two words, I did some research. I know my grandmama, I know how to describe her, but I did some crowdsourcing with my family to find out what words should I use.
Mm-hmm.
I went on Messenger, our group chat of the family, and I asked them, can you describe grandmama in one word? And from all the words that I got, those two seemed to fit well with the third element. So
Okay.
it just goes to show you how much work we can put into just two words of one particular speech.
Right. Okay. And if you have any comments, please put it in the chat as well if you're interested in asking any questions, and we'll try to touch on any of the questions that we do see or any of the comments. We'll do our very best. So why don't you carry on, Alexandre?
Yes. So here is next one. I won't even introduce this thing. I like it so much. Wait, I lost Roger. There we go.
My part. So I took Grandmama's recipe and I followed the instructions to the letter, which is not easy. Start with a chunk of butter. Chunk? I don't know what that is.
How do you like that?
Oh, I love it because it reminds me of my grandmother and of course old school cooking where they really didn't have anything written down. They trial and error. It was all about that, right? So it's funny that you just said chunk of butter.
Yes, and this actually comes
if that is one of.
Go ahead, Roger.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so
we're messing up. You see, here we go. This is all about live.
Yes. So the chunk, why is it really written chunk? You know what? The recipe is probably written in French, so it's not really written that. But the recipe that I have is a French translation from the English version that my mother wrote while speaking to her mother-in-law who speaks only French. So it's complicated, but it's a game of telephone where it becomes scrambled. And the real thing that is written on the recipe is 1 piece of butter as big as 1 yellow of 1 egg, which is longer to say than a chunk.
Long, yeah, it's very long to say.
So I was trying to find a way to say those words, but in a much shorter time, and I think it makes it funnier even. And it's I have to shout out to my sister and my spouse who helped me find those words to make it shorter and funnier.
And of course, Peggy is here saying that she loves how you introduced your grandmama in French, as well as continued in your first language. Shows how important language and culture is to you. Thank you very much for the comments.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. And that was important to me so that I didn't lose my own identity while sharing this story. I even mentioned the name of the recipe in French first. Le gâteau pas cuit, with a subtitle.
I thought that was really cool. Now, I like that. I actually like that. Now, why don't you go just explain? You had a funny moment there. And I thought that was very important to gain the audience's attention in that moment by starting with the French and then telling them, what, do you want it in subtitles? And then coming back to it. What was the idea for that as well?
Well, as Peggy mentioned, it's so that you can come into my world and in my French-Canadian family and our traditions. I wanted to show that. And you know what? Thinking of it, it's not necessary, not crucial. If I wanted to make it even shorter, I could remove that. But then it would be like removing a part of me and of my own identity. And I was not ready to do that.
Right. All right, let's go on.
All right.
We're just moving along here already. We're at 12:46 and we just got started. I mean, and everybody's commenting. So obviously they're very interested. Thank you very much for all your comments. Appreciating it.
All right. Here, I try to make the family recipe, and my uncle Pierre is there to criticize it every year.
"12 years after my first try, Pierre said something different. Oh, Alexandre, your cake, it tastes like childhood. What? It's just cake.
Wow.
This is a great moment, and I do believe a lot of people can identify with the fact that a family recipe is important for their own traditions, and it can bring them back to childhood. But 12 years. So the question that has never been asked of me is, was Pierre really that severe? And the answer is yes and no. He was always ready to criticize the cake while eating more than anybody else. But
Right.
It's not exactly. It's almost like I led the audience believe that he's not accepting that I made the cake, when in fact, the first time I did it, he was happy that I was doing it. And this year, or the past year, one of my cousins created her own version of the cake. And when I say her own, it's exactly the same ingredients, but it looks different and it's made differently. And Pierre had a bite of it and he said, "Oh, this is how my mom made it." And I have to admit, he's right, because I bit into it and I thought, how come she got it right this first time? Although it was the second time, because she had created it a few weeks before and it looked awful.
Right.
I want to touch on impressive what it can bring as memories.
Right. I want to touch on it because we've got so many people sending in messages here. Now, we fast forwarded a bit of his speech there. And again, if you want to see the entire speech, please go online and look up Alexandre Matt, and you will see his award-winning speech. But before all that had happened in that last scene, we had conflict. And we talked about it in the beginning, the three elements that you shared. And that conflict was that your grandmother had passed away. Even before that, your aunt Christian had passed away. And those were the two people who were making that no-bake cake in the family during the tradition. You then stepped up and then started to make it after they had passed away. We have questions here, and we're going to get to those questions as well. But that conflict, why don't you touch on that and how it all came down to you being the one to step up?
Yeah, well, I present the conflict as someone needs to make the cake, but it's much more than that. The cake is one small part. As another example in the speech, I say, well, when Christiane has passed away, my aunt, because she was the hostess, we wonder, well, what's going to happen now, because she's not there to host us, she's not there to cook for us, we were. I say that we were scrambled to find what we're going to do, and so each one of us, and we saw that clip, I did my part with the cake. So the cake is one part of our family recipe, among other things. And later on in the speech, I mentioned, now my generation is sort of taking it on. It's last time it was my cousin who hosted us rather than one of the aunts or uncles.
Right.
I got the cake, and my sister, my cousin brought up some of it too. But we're getting together to make that tradition keep going in order for our family to keep going. And that was the first time, the last family gathering, it was the first time without grandmama, but we had the best turnout since I can remember, like since I was a child.
Right. Awesome.
So
let's just answer these questions while we're here, because we're running out of time. But you had a question here by Vickers. Hi, Vickers. Thanks for joining us. Anthony as well for joining us. I didn't get the chance to say hello to you, but basically Vickers is asking, what was the challenge of being online versus those who were on site? And did you think that they had an advantage for being there? And I even questioned you, and here's where we're going to have the conflicts, me and you. I even was the one that questioned why you wouldn't go there after being, us being online for 3 years, and you had the opportunity to be there live in Nashville. Why wouldn't you take the opportunity to do that? So, I mean.
Yeah, well, it is.
It all
It
worked
is
out,
because,
but
yeah, it worked out, and the real reason is because I didn't want to leave my family. It was a family gathering. Now, here's a little
Mhm.
secret. The family gathering that I talk about in that speech is New Year's Eve.
Mhm.
So that's the yearly tradition. But there's also another family gathering with just my closer family, um, that is during the summer. And it turns out that the convention in Nashville was at the same time as that gathering. And I wasn't ready to go to Nashville and say, oh, family is important, traditions are important. That's why my family is over there and I'm not, I'm here and not with them.
Right.
So I
Right.
addressed that at the very beginning of my speech. So
Mhm.
that's the simple reason I was with my family. That's why I was not in Nashville. But to answer that question, I could go on and on about this. And maybe we can have just one full episode about being online versus being on site. There
Of
were
course.
advantages to being on site. Obviously, you have the immediate reaction of the crowd, but there were advantages of being online. I was on big screens and I could go close to the camera, which the on-site audiences could not. So I could be like eye to eye, um, not literally, but I could
Mhm.
simulate eye contact very clearly with
Right.
my audience, both the audience that were watching online and the audiences who were on site. They saw me really bigger than life.
Right. I think that's what most people would say as well. I mean, there is advantages and disadvantages to it. But Alexandre, you did a fantastic job, and we even had some comments here as well that were saying that as well, that everybody has a Pierre in their family. Thank you very much for that, Keith. And that Rob said that the cake brings you back to your childhood. As well, we had here's a question, Patricia, who was in Nashville. That's right, Patricia, you were in Nashville and you enjoyed the virtual contestants more. Okay, look at that.
Isn't that interesting?
So
Because you see them
that's very
live.
interesting.
So, and this is a message, and I've ranted about this before, but a message to Toastmasters International, those who organize the contest at the World Championship, please zoom in or have multiple cameras for the contestants on site. It will be much better for the audience, and it'll be much better for the contestants as well.
Mm-hmm.
I did see Shahrukh Daruwala's name show up. That's one. He's a specialist of stories, and he also dissected my speech. He was the first one to tell me that Pierre is an antagonist, the enemy of the story, and it's partly because of that I wanted to clear it up. We're not really enemies.
Right, right. Well, shout out to, how do you say his name? Shahrukh?
Shahrukh.
Is that it? Shahrukh? Okay.
I say Shahrukh
Thank you for
Daruwala.
being,
He can correct us.
yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And of course, Anthony is also saying that were you thrilled to finish in second in the world, or was there a chunk of disappointment for being that close to the Grand Prix?
I was thrilled. There was no.
And I saw that in you.
Yeah, and yeah, I think we see my reaction on the big screen, but you don't see me jumping up and down when I do receive it, because it was a great. The disappointment that I have was not being able to enjoy it with the people who were there in Nashville, because we turned off our cameras and it's like, okay, now I'll tear down my equipment now. I was all alone in the studio.
Yeah, and that was the same with me the year before that. And so I understand completely that feeling of winning, and then you have nowhere to turn with anybody there to enjoy it like you would if we were right there. And I think that for me, and again, we'll touch on my next week, we will be analyzing my speech. I think, though, Alexandre, you can agree or disagree, but that feeling of being there live and accepting your trophy and having those around you coming and congratulating you, would you have at least would have wanted that? If you could have snapped your fingers in that moment, would you have at least wanted that?
Yes, and Lisa Marie Miller was in Nashville and also in the finals, and I think she also wrote to me right after the finals and said, okay, now take the plane and come down and party with us. Yes, of course I would have wanted to be there, but I had more for me, it was more important to be with my family at that time. I do have a last clip. Can we finish with that?
If everybody doesn't mind, we'll go ahead. Why not? I hope you don't mind. Do you mind? Put in the chat.
This is a 10-second clip. Do they mind?
They have not answered, but go ahead. Go right ahead. One more. Why not?
Now, we've talked about my cake, my family recipe, but there's another really important element. I do mention Fiddler on the Roof, the movie, the musical, and I have a parallel between the family, the struggle inside the family, the personal and the precise struggle, and the struggle that Tevier, the main character, has in Fiddler on the Roof. And here is where I have the link. I link it a little bit in the beginning, but especially here.
Right.
Without our main ingredient, without Grand-Maman, I don't know, maybe our family will crumble? Tradition! In that movie, Fiddler on the Roof, everything.
Yeah. You started that way. You started the speech that way. And of course, you brought it back, which is also a great part of your content, in that you were able to tie the beginning to the end with the stories.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, and you know, I used to have a long-winded way of bringing it back to the movie, but it was easier to just feel tradition and linking my family to the story of the Jewish people being uprooted and needing to leave. You know, I had wanted to include Fiddler on the Roof for a long time. I had been working on this speech on and off for years, but I was never able to include Fiddler on the Roof until I tried it much more and last year, and with the help of my coach, Mark Hunter, 2009 world champion of public speaking. All right, so that was the last clip for today. I've got many more, but maybe I'll make something just for those who are more curious.
We could talk forever, you and I think, and I hope that our listeners enjoyed getting a little sample of why Alexandre did what he did in his speech and breaking it down for you. And again, if you want to listen to the speech, please go online, look up Alexandre Matt. You will see his speech. He's at alexandrematt.com or on YouTube. You'll find it there. The World Championship of Public Speaking, second place winner in 2022, my good friend, Alexandre Matt. Thank you again for joining us. Alexandre, you got anything? I'm going to have to look at you right here. Alexandre, you got anything to say, man?
Well, this has I plan to have just 4 clips that would take about 10 minutes total, but I realize that
You're a talker.
I'm a talker, and it is passionate to talk about this. And you know, sometimes, Roger, does it happen that you look at a recording of a speech and it's like, I don't really like that. I don't want to look at it. But then you see something that you've created and it's completely the opposite. You enjoy watching it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this has happened with this particular recording and speech. I enjoy looking at it. So and it's probably because of so much work that has been put into it from myself, but also from all the people who were around me, helping me create that speech. Roger.
Well, thank you again to everyone who joined us. We will close it off at this point. Please tune in next week. Again, same bat channel, same bat time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Great Combos. And again, whether you agree or disagree, you can always find Great Combos.
Great Combos.
Take care, everyone.
See you later.